It started on a Wednesday morning like any other. The sky was clear, the birds were chirping, and the city buzzed with its usual rhythm. Danielle Thompson, a 26-year-old nursing student, had just finished her overnight shift at the hospital. Exhausted but relieved, she walked to the parking lot, sipping a lukewarm coffee and dreaming about the few hours of rest she could catch before her afternoon classes. Danielle's life wasn't flashy. She didn't seek attention. She was just trying to make ends meet, working nights, studying days, taking care of her younger brother at home. Her car, a used 2003 Toyota Camry with one red door and 3 gray ones, wasn't much to look at. But to her, it was freedom. Her entire life depended on that vehicle. It got her to school, to work, to pick up groceries, to drive her brother to appointments. That car was her lifeline. As she approached the car, she noticed something strange. A patrol car was parked near it. 2 officers stood beside her Camry, speaking to each other and occasionally looking around. Danielle hesitated. Maybe they were just resting. Maybe it had nothing to do with her. But as she unlocked the door and placed her hand on the handle, one of the officers called out, "Ma'am, step away from the vehicle." Danielle turned, puzzled. "I'm sorry?" The officer approached, eyes scanning her quickly. "This vehicle was reported stolen. Step away." Danielle laughed awkwardly, confused. "That's my car. I just finished my shift. I parked it here last night." The other officer chimed in. "Ma'am, we need you to back away now. Hands visible." Within moments, the situation escalated. Her ID was taken. She tried explaining. The car registration was in the glove compartment. Her hospital badge was hanging around her neck. She pointed to the school sticker on the windshield. She even offered to show text messages confirming her shift schedule. None of it mattered. A call had come in, an anonymous report claiming the vehicle had been stolen. The car was old, mismatched in color, and parked in a lot near a hospital known for occasional car thefts. It fit the profile. And Danielle, despite her calm demeanor and clear evidence, fit the assumptions. Handcuffed, stunned, and humiliated, she sat in the back of the police car while passers-by slowed to stare. Nurses she had worked with, patients she had cared for, all watching as she was driven away like a criminal. The holding cell was cold. The hours dragged. Her phone was taken, and with it, her ability to call her brother or let her professor know she wouldn't make it to class. No one asked if she was okay. No one explained what was happening, and in that stillness, Danielle sat with her thoughts. She wasn't angry. Not yet. She was confused, disoriented. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of how someone could lose their freedom so quickly just for trying to go home. Eventually, her public defender arrived, tired and rushed, barely giving her 5 minutes of attention. "You say it's your car?" he asked, flipping through paperwork. "Got proof?" "Yes. The registration is in the glove box. My name is on it." He nodded without looking up. "We'll sort it out." But sorting it out didn't happen overnight. Danielle was held for nearly 2 full days. In that time, her brother, who had special needs, was left alone. Her professor marked her absent. Her boss docked her pay. And worst of all, her trust, her belief in fairness, was cracked. When the truth finally surfaced, it was simple. Someone had mistakenly reported a similar vehicle. The officers hadn't waited to verify ownership. They hadn't checked the VIN number. They reacted, and Danielle paid the price. The case was dropped. No charges filed, no apology given, but the damage was done. When Danielle returned to campus, something shifted. People treated her differently. Some whispered. Some looked at her with pity. Others avoided her entirely. In a world where perception is often stronger than fact, Danielle was now someone who had been arrested. Even if wrongfully, she could have let it break her. She could have withdrawn, buried herself in resentment, pointed fingers and burned bridges. But she didn't. Instead, she leaned in. She started reading more, books about the justice system, about bias, about systemic assumptions that follow people of color, especially women. She joined advocacy groups. She volunteered for a legal rights clinic that helped the wrongly accused. And at night, after long shifts and tiring classes, she journaled everything. She wrote about fear, about humiliation, about the silence in the back of that police car. She wrote about the moment she realized that in the eyes of the law, truth didn't always come first. Appearance did. Over time, Danielle's story began to spread. Her professors asked her to speak. One invited her to give a presentation about implicit bias in healthcare and law enforcement. Another helped her get a small piece published in a student journal. But it wasn't just about exposure. It was about clarity. That experience, painful as it was, stripped away the distractions in her life. The petty anxieties about grades, about whether people liked her, about whether she was doing enough. Because when you sit in a cell for something you didn't do, when the world turns its back without asking questions, you learn what actually matters. She focused harder than ever. Her grades improved. She stopped wasting time on things that drained her. She became more present, more mindful, more deliberate in every choice she made. She meditated each morning. She practiced deep breathing during stressful shifts. And she stopped waiting for life to be fair before she started living with intention. Danielle graduated with honors. She was the keynote speaker at her ceremony, not because of her GPA, but because of her story. Her speech didn't focus on bitterness. It focused on truth, on growth, on what it means to fall through the cracks and climb back out. She reminded the audience that life isn't always just, that sometimes you can do everything right and still get punished, but that doesn't mean you give up. It means you become sharper, quieter inside, more focused. Danielle's experience taught her something she never learned in textbooks. That resilience isn't loud. It's not in grand speeches or viral videos. It's in quiet moments of choice, in the decision to keep showing up, to keep loving, to keep building something real, even when the world mistakes you for something else. And maybe that's the lesson we all need. Life will make assumptions about you. People will project their fears onto you. Systems may not always work in your favor. But none of that defines you. What defines you is how you respond. Do you get bitter or better? Do you let the noise drown you out? Or do you turn inward and sharpen your vision? Danielle's story is not just about wrongful arrest. It's about the power of presence, of discipline, of refusing to let temporary injustice steal permanent peace. In a world of distractions, of labels, of quick judgments, Danielle chose clarity. And maybe, just maybe, that's how we grow. She never set out to become a symbol. She wasn't chasing recognition or applause. She only wanted her life back, her peace, her purpose, her right to move through the world without suspicion. But life had shifted something deep within her. One afternoon, months after the arrest, Danielle sat quietly on a park bench, watching her brother feed the ducks. He laughed at how they waddled and quacked, tossing breadcrumbs with clumsy joy. That moment, simple and undramatic, struck her harder than anything that came before. She realized she might have missed this had things turned out worse. A small error could have unraveled her life entirely, and no one would have noticed. The system would have kept moving, papers shuffled, forms signed, and Danielle would have become another forgotten name in a dusty file. That's when she knew her voice mattered, not because she was loud or famous, but because silence was no longer an option. She started attending city council meetings, not to complain, but to understand. She listened more than she spoke. She asked better questions. She began helping others, people like her who had been misjudged, ignored, mislabeled. She shared her story not to relive the trauma, but to remind people. Justice is fragile. If you're not paying attention, it disappears right in front of you. One evening, she was invited to speak at a police academy. At first, she hesitated. Standing in front of those who had once handcuffed her felt impossible. But then she remembered something she'd read during her long nights awake. Forgiveness isn't approval. It's freedom. She walked into that room with trembling hands but steady eyes. She spoke with calm conviction. She told them what it felt like to be mistaken for a criminal, to be dismissed, to be invisible, not because of her actions, but because of her appearance, because someone called in a report and no one asked enough questions before deciding she was guilty. Some officers looked away. Some crossed their arms, but one, an older sergeant with gray in his beard, nodded slowly. After the session, he approached her. "I've been doing this for 30 years, he said. "I thought I'd seen it all. But today, you made me realize how much I've missed. Thank you." Danielle didn't need validation, but that moment, that mattered, because growth had occurred, not just in her, but in him, in that room, in the cracks of a system too long resistant to change. As time passed, Danielle finished nursing school and got a job at a community clinic. Her patients came from every walk of life. Some spoke no English, some had nowhere else to go, many were too scared to ask for help. She understood them in a way textbooks never taught. She saw their pain, their silence, their guardedness, and she met them there, not with pity, but with presence. She treated them the way she had once wished someone would treat her, like a person, not a file, not a risk, a human. That's when she realized something deeper. Her arrest didn't just change her path, it gave her purpose. Without it, she may have chased perfection, grades, approval, stability, without ever asking the bigger questions. What do I value? Who do I serve? What am I building? The arrest stripped away her illusions, and what was left was real, solid, unshakable. Danielle stopped chasing things that didn't align with her values. No more trying to please everyone, no more stretching herself thin for the sake of being enough. She defined her own terms. Her schedule changed. Less time on social media, more time journaling. Less time comparing, more time reflecting. She read Marcus Aurelius and Thich Nhat Hanh. She practiced mindfulness like it was medicine. Because it was, discipline became her way forward. Not as punishment, but as devotion. Every morning she woke before sunrise. She'd sit in silence for 10 minutes, breathe deeply, and remind herself, I own nothing in this world but my choices. And today I choose peace. That single practice rewired her thinking. Her emotions no longer controlled her. She welcomed discomfort as a teacher. She accepted setbacks without self-doubt. She trained her mind to focus, not on what could go wrong, but on what she could control. When people asked her how she stayed so calm under pressure, she smiled. "Because I've already been broken once," she'd say. "I don't fear falling. I just focus on walking." Years passed. Danielle became known in her community, not for what happened to her, but for what she did with it. She trained interns at the clinic. She mentored young women navigating school, work, and identity. She taught a monthly mindfulness class called Quiet Strength. She even launched a small nonprofit to provide legal aid for low-income residents caught in the justice system's web. And yet, she never forgot that bench, that park, that moment with her brother feeding ducks. Because growth, she knew, wasn't about applause. It was about alignment, and she was finally in sync with herself, with her purpose, with her peace. There were still challenges, of course. Life didn't magically become easy. But her relationship to struggle changed. She no longer asked, "Why me?" Instead, she asked, "What can I learn from this?" She started measuring success by different metrics, not by income or titles, but by her ability to stay present, by how deeply she listened, by how often she chose integrity over comfort. Sometimes people asked her if she wished the arrest had never happened. She always paused before answering. because the truth was complex. She would never wish that pain on anyone, and yet it woke her up. It forced her to stop drifting, to stop living someone else's version of success, to stop being who the world told her to be, and become who she was meant to be. So no, she wouldn't erase it. She'd grow from it, because that's what life is. Not a straight line, but a series of awakenings. Some are soft, some are brutal, but all of them are invitations to rise. And Danielle? She rose with quiet fire. She chose not to let a broken moment define a broken life. She chose to become more grounded, more aware, more alive. And through her story, she invites us all to do the same, to question what we've accepted, to challenge the labels we wear, to strip away the noise and return to what's real. Because in a world full of assumptions and distractions, the most radical act is to know yourself deeply and live with intention. Danielle didn't ask to be a lesson, but she became one. And now the question is, what will you do with it? She never imagined her story would ripple outward like this. It began with a single voice. A blog post she wrote one night after finishing a late shift at the clinic. The words came out raw, unpolished, but honest. She didn't try to sound wise. She just told the truth. What happened, what it taught her, how it changed her. She hit publish and went to sleep, not expecting much. By morning, it had been shared hundreds of times. By the end of the week, thousands. People wrote to her, not just with sympathy, but with their own stories of being profiled, ignored, mislabeled, of moments when they were judged by the color of their skin, the clothes they wore, or the neighborhood they lived in. Men, women, teenagers, teachers, veterans, nurses. Some had cried reading her post. Some had gotten angry. Some said they'd printed it out and read it aloud to their families. Danielle read every message, every single one, and she wept, not from sadness, but from recognition, from the quiet relief of knowing, I am not alone. That's when she knew the story didn't belong to her anymore. It belonged to everyone who had ever felt invisible. So she kept writing, she kept showing up. She began hosting monthly community circles, small, safe spaces for people to share their experiences. At first, only 5 people came, then 10, then 30. Eventually, the local library offered their main room for the gatherings. They called it Truth Table. There were no speakers, no podiums, just chairs in a circle and an invitation. Speak your truth. Be seen. Some nights, the stories were heavy. Other nights, they were filled with laughter. But every time, something sacred happened. Walls came down. Assumptions cracked, strangers listened, and healing began. Danielle saw what most people missed, that the way forward wasn't louder arguments, it was deeper understanding, not more division, but more presence. Her story had taught her that justice doesn't start in courtrooms. It starts in conversations and growth. Real growth? It happens when you stop running from the hard questions, when you face yourself, your biases, your fears, your pride. One night after a truth table session, an elderly woman approached Danielle. She'd been quiet all evening, just observing. I want you to know, she said, gently holding Danielle's hands. I was raised to fear people who looked like you, but listening to you tonight, I see my granddaughter in you. I see her courage in your voice. Thank you for reminding me that it's never too late to learn. Danielle felt something stir in her chest, something ancient and new all at once. A soft, steady reminder. Hearts change when stories are shared. She started visiting high schools after that, speaking to teens, not to lecture, but to listen. She told them how easily a life can shift, how a simple moment can become a defining one. She encouraged them to stay grounded in who they are, to be mindful of their choices, to choose friends who uplift, not distract, To unplug when their soul needed silence, they asked her real questions, not just about the arrest, but about fear, about forgiveness, about how to keep going when everything feels broken, and she gave them the truth. "You're not broken," she'd say. "You're becoming. Don't rush the process, but don't waste it either." She told them discipline wasn't about punishment. It was about building a life worth living, and mindfulness wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. The ability to pause, to reflect, to respond, not react. Some people, she told them, won't like your light. That's okay. Keep shining, not to blind them, but to see your own path clearly. The schools began requesting her more often, then the universities. Eventually, a national podcast asked her for an interview. She hesitated, afraid that the bigger the stage, the more diluted the message. But then she remembered why she started. It wasn't about spotlight, it was about service, so she said yes, and she told the story again. Not for drama, not for pity, but to plant seeds, seeds of awareness, of accountability, of hope. As the podcast episode went viral, Danielle received invitations to speak all over the country, but she stayed grounded. She said no to what didn't feel aligned. She kept her mornings sacred. She stayed off her phone after 8 p.m. She journaled daily, even if it was just one sentence, because she knew the outer work only mattered if the inner work continued. One night, on a flight home from a speaking event, a woman next to her leaned over and said, "I know you. I heard your story. I changed careers because of you. I'm in law school now. I want to be a public defender. You reminded me what justice really means." Danielle smiled, stunned into silence. The woman continued, "It's not just what happened to you. It's how you responded. That's what stayed with me." Danielle looked out the window at the stars, scattered across the night sky, like reminders of all the lives we'll never fully see, but somehow still touch. That night, she wrote in her journal, "Impact isn't about how many people know your name. It's about how many lives shift because you stayed true to your soul." She closed her eyes, not with pride, but with peace. Because she understood now, life isn't about waiting for storms to pass. It's about learning how to stand still in the rain, to listen, to feel, to grow. Her story, once a source of pain, had become her offering, and every time she told it, she wasn't just revisiting her past, she was reclaiming her future, and maybe, just maybe, helping others do the same.